Good morning. It's my great pleasure this morning to welcome and to introduce my friend and St. Christopher's alumnus Robley Bates to speak with us here in chapel. I've known Robley for over 35 years. We were teammates in the early 1980s on the mighty Leopards soccer squad in Three Chop Soccer League. About 12 years after that, Robley and I were classmates and eventually roommates at the University of Virginia, and we've stayed in touch over the years. In 1998, when I moved to Washington, D.C. to teach, Robley earned his commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. Over the next 5 years, Robley rose in rank to first lieutenant and eventually to captain, and over 3 6-month deployments in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Africa, he commanded 2 platoons and led dozens of Marines on nearly 20 different combat missions in support of Operations Determined Response and Iraqi Freedom. In 2003, Robley returned to the United States to Quantico, Virginia, where he served as the head weapons instructor at the basic school, supervising 20 instructors in weapons training exercises and training over 1,000 student officers among 5 basic school companies. After completing his service in the Marine Corps in 2006, Robley returned to the University of Virginia, where he earned his master's in business administration from the Darden School of Business. From 2008 to 2012, Robley lived and worked in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Birmingham, Alabama. In Birmingham, Robley worked as a hood technician and then a pit technician, then assistant shop manager, and then head shop manager at Express Oil Change and Tire Engineers. This work was all in preparation for a startup business venture that Robley had envisioned for his hometown of Richmond. In 2013, Robley did return to Richmond, where he became the owner and operator of a new Express Oil Change and Tire Engineer shop in Midlothian, with the second location that he opened in Mechanicsville in 2016, and with a third location in Chester slated to open this fall. In a very short period of time, Robley has grown his business to its present status as the largest oil change business in the state of Virginia by car count, with continued expansion in the works. I asked Robley if he would speak with us this morning to talk about his experience of service to his country in the Marine Corps and of entrepreneurship through his business ventures, because I think it is a wonderful example of the varied and noble paths that a St. Christopher's education can take you. Robley, we are grateful for your service to our country and for your many contributions to our city. Will you all please join me in welcoming Robley Bates, class of 1994, back to campus.
Thank you, Mason, for that warm introduction. You basically covered half my speech going through that. I wasn't expecting all that. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a privilege to talk to you all this morning. And it's an honor to see so many wonderful teachers. I was walking around and say hello to Mr. Smith, Mr. Johns, Tony Semdare. It's been years since I've talked to some of these great guys and who taught me 20-some years ago. And it's been almost 20 years since I've been in this little box right here. I came back once for Mr. Bowling's memorial service, and that's the last time I was here in the course of 20 years. So it is amazing how much it is the same here and how different it is out there. I told Mason and Tony, I didn't drink cucumber water when I was here as a student. So things have changed a little bit. I want to thank the Peanut Gallery for showing up too, the class of 1994. Talk about a well-planned ambush. Don't throw tomatoes at me, guys. When Mr. Leckie, and I call him Mason, but because we were roommates, but when Mr. Leckie asked me to come speak today, he gave me a little guidance. He said, talk about your experience at St. C and how it prepared you for your time in the Marines and in small business ventures. I honestly wasn't sure where to go with that. At one point, I completely cut out St. C from the talk and wanted to talk just about military stuff. I changed everything up last night. My wife was like, what are you doing? It's 11 o'clock, and I'm rewriting the entire speech. I do think my 8 years in the Marine Corps really shaped me the most out of anything. However, it really bugged me. It's been bugging me for a week that I couldn't pinpoint anything at St. Chris that may have shaped my career going forward in the military and in business. A little frustrated, I opened up the 1994 Raps and Taps, the best piece of literature I think this institution's ever created. I still laugh at it to this very day. Some of the guys in here wrote a lot of the stuff that was in there. But it really didn't drill down to something substantial for me to talk about. That got me thinking about the Pine Needle and my time as the editor of the Pine Needle. Who's the editor right now? 3 of them? Okay. You guys love your job? Okay. It's a great experience. I'll talk a little bit about that. So I dug into some of these Pine Needles. This is old school stuff. I started reading. I started laughing. Just got completely sidetracked. And again, this is last night. I grabbed the scanner and I started scanning stuff. Here's some of the articles I pulled out from '94. The Dave Matthews Band shines for homecoming. Can you believe Dave Matthews played in that building 20-some years ago? You guys weren't even born. We're old. Late night dining at Aunt Sarah's Guru style. The connoisseur to Taco Bell rebukes the guru. This was a recurring point-by-point or point-counterpoint piece that we did almost every issue. Real serious stuff. You talk about some fake news. This was some fake news. And who could forget the Pine Needle's Man of the Month, and I'm glad he's here today. Look at what we made this guy do. He's now a big tobacco executive, and he's hanging out here today. Keen, I warned you not to come. Genny Gavick says seniors want ping pong table back. Genny Gavick was my pen name when I didn't want to know anything. I didn't want anyone to know that I was writing the article. Again, a lot of fake news. I remember the first editorial I wrote. I actually critiqued Tony Semendera. Tony had silenced the student section during a heated varsity basketball game. The language was divisive on both sides, I'll admit it. But in all fairness to Mr. Semendera, he was completely justified in what he said and making us sit down. I regret the article to this day. However, the cool thing was the school let me write it. The school gave me a lot of latitude, and I appreciated it. The point of this quick little show and tell is not to say these were great articles. They weren't. Or that I was a great editor. I was not. The point is that I had a lot of fun doing it. It spurred creativity, initiative, improvising. It was entrepreneurial. You were thinking out of the box. A time when you got ownership of something and just ran with it. We'd break into the school. We actually would go into Mr. John's office. That's where we worked on the Pine Needle. We had deadlines to meet. There were no security cameras. There were no locks at this place. You could just go in the place anytime you wanted. We had staff meetings. It was fun. The school gave us gave us very little guidance, and I don't know why, and just cut us loose. If we got off course, they steered us back on track. I got just enough rope not to hang myself. So I have a theory, and I have no data to back this up at all. But if you did a study of the guys who ran school publications, Raps and Taps, Pine Needle, Hieroglyphic, I think you guys have got some other stuff out there now too. I bet you'd find that a lot of those guys start their own ventures and lead other organizations. I believe this early entrepreneurial leadership plants a seed, or at least it did with me. And looking back, some of the best experiences I had after high school were when I was empowered. I could make mistakes. I could make my own decisions based on a particular goal with very limited guidance. So how does this relate to that? How does the Pine Needle relate to the Marine Corps? My favorite job in the Marine Corps was as a mortar platoon commander. This is my platoon right here. You go right there. These are 81 millimeter mortar tubes. Yeah, they're like big potato guns that blow up everything. I wanted this job really badly. I fought for it. I trained for it. I went to mortar courses to learn the weapon system, how to employ it, total immersion. As the 81s guy of the larger battalion, a 1,200-man Marine battalion, I was their indirect fire weapons expert. I could roam the battlefield however I wanted to in combat, as long as I was supporting the battalion's mission. It was an unconventional job. It was independent. Every mission I had was independent of whatever everyone else was doing, and I loved it. It was entrepreneurial. I believe now this job set the stage for a lot of the freedom and entrepreneurial spirit that I craved when I got into the business world. But just to take a step back so you guys understand a little bit of the Marine Corps, there's a lot in the Marine Corps that is about shooting guns and blowing stuff up. And I did love that. I really did. Even though it had a strict process and procedure for weapons training, leadership training in the Marine Corps is very Socratic. You ask yourself questions after questions. You put yourself in different scenarios. You put yourself through case studies, battle studies. You make decisions. Ask yourself why I made those decisions. There's never a right answer, and that always bothered me, always frustrated me. But this type of training builds a critical thinker on the battlefield, people who can adapt and overcome in any stressful situation. Another thing to note, mission orders in the Marine Corps reinforce independent and flexible thinking. I think a lot of people think the Marine Corps is just a bunch of dumb jarheads running around shooting people. Couldn't be farther from the truth, certainly in the infantry. There's three things you have in a mission order: a task, a purpose, and an end state. The task is like the what of the mission: destroy, suppress, secure. The purpose is the why. Why are we doing this mission? Why are we doing this? And then the third thing is the end state. What's the final result desired at the end of the battle? What's the vision for what we're doing? The task can change as the chaos develops on the battlefield, but the purpose, the end state, those things never change, and I think it's important to remember that. I'll give you an example. Here's my platoon heading up to Baghdad from Kuwait. We're 2 weeks in the invasion of Iraq. U.S. forces have made it to Baghdad. It's a 500-mile trek from Kuwait to the capital city. As my battalion moves through the city, my job is to stay on the battalion's right flank, protect them from whatever's going on, shoot bombs if necessary. Battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel, and I sat down and picked where I was going to move to provide suppressive fires. When I got there, I didn't like it. Kind of like that picture I saw of Mr. Smith. A lot of kids, a lot of families, people looking at you, coming out to see what was going on. It was a neighborhood, and these are not neighborhoods like Richmond, Virginia. They look like construction sites. I didn't feel comfortable. They were exposed. These little girls were exposed. We were exposed. So I said to my platoon sergeant, we're moving. I looked for a spot on the map, and I just went for it about a half-mile north. We dismounted. I found a walled-in compound. Looked like good cover, good concealment. When I got inside, I noticed it looked kind of like a small country club. Inside was a spa, dining room, a bar area. That stuff was all looted. We just pushed past it. But in the middle of the country club was a soccer field. Green grass, brown dirt, soft. Threw my shovel in there, and it sunk in like butter. So what do you think I did? I said, guys, go get the platoon. We're moving to a new position. And that's what we did. I didn't have to ask anybody to do it. I just did it. I didn't have to call the battalion commander. I just made the decision, moved a half-mile north, and set up shop. All my guys loved it. 2 days prior to that, same situation, different outcome. We're entering the city at night. There's no time to recon a position. It's dark. The enemy situation's completely unknown. So I hunt for a spot on a map and find something that looks like a place where I can set up the guns. We creep in. I look through the night vision goggles, and it looks like a big parking lot. Doesn't smell like a parking lot. I don't know what parking lots smell like, but this didn't smell like one. Smelled bad, but we didn't have a choice. We had to get in there. We had to set up the guns. When we set up the guns, there was dogs everywhere, wild dogs. And these are not mom and dad's golden retrievers. These are like werewolves. Something just felt off to me. But we had to get in, and we just sat tight. The next morning, we realized what the smell was. Rotting bodies. Animal bodies. Dogs, cows, horses, goats, and some human remains too. That's why the dogs were there. We'd interrupted their dinner. My guys called it Pet Cemetery. And when the sun came up, so did the flies. My platoon sergeant came up to me and said, "Sir, when are we moving?" I said, "We're not moving." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because it doesn't accomplish commander's intent. It doesn't accomplish the end state. We can't support the battalion if we're not in the right position. And there's no way bad guys are coming into this spot." So how do you connect the dots from that guy with the pine needle to that guy in the pet cemetery to that guy as an entrepreneur in automotive repair? I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to be a franchisee, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have any idea how to repair a car. So I fell back on mortar training, total immersion. In 2010, I left my corporate job, went down to Birmingham, Alabama, where the franchisor was, and I asked them, put me in the dirtiest, toughest job you can find. And they did. I stayed there for 3 months. It was like boot camp all over again, learning oil changes, learning tires, all sorts of stuff. When I got done with it, I realized I couldn't get a bank loan. It's the middle of the financial crisis. I'm kind of stuck. Or was I? I went to the guys and said, "Guys, can I stay on a little bit longer?" They said, "Sure, why not?" So I stayed there, like Mason said, was a hood technician, was a pit technician, assistant manager. Nobody knew I'd been to college or Darden or anything like that. I just immersed myself. I stayed there for 2 years. It was like getting an MBA in automotive repair. Staying in Alabama was the best decision I ever made as a business owner. By the time I'd opened up my shops in Richmond, I'd made every mistake you'd make. I'd seen every scenario you could. Very few things surprised me. The growing pains were less. To me, it was simple. When I opened my doors, I knew the end state, and I just executed. So I'll leave you guys with 3 takeaways, because I know we got to get going, and I need to get a free breakfast from Mason. Remember your purpose and your end state as you guys go through life, okay? Those shouldn't change, but your plan is going to, so be willing to adapt. Second, the military is not for everybody. I loved it, but it's not. But serving others is. So try it if you haven't. I know a lot of you guys have. I've seen what y'all have done. It'll make a better man out of you. And the last thing is, intellect's important, but nothing trumps attitude, persistence, and a little sense of humor. Thank you.
Announcements, please. Mr. Johns.
Couple things scheduling wise. Reminder to 10th graders that we will meet after chapel tomorrow to discuss scheduling process. 9th and 9th graders, your schedules were due last Thursday. Given that fewer than 40% of you have turned them in, I would hate to see the hours list tomorrow. You could get hours if you have not turned them in, or at least had a conversation with you to work out something today. And you can take care of that responsibility. Also need to see Jaden Smith on his way out about
dismissed.
Paying these guys to thank me?
What's that?
Said you're paying these guys to thank me?
That's it.